Hey everyone, this video is all about the journey of setting up an HR system based on a case study at a mining company. After this video, you understand more about the different aspects involved in the development of an HR system and how you yourself can apply them in your own cases. Before we look into the aspects, I would like to give you context of the case study. The company name is Nam10, which is a mining organization that was struggling with management. There are three major problems, namely vague corporate structure, unclear responsibility, and no performance measurement. These issues resulted in work conflicts, high micromanagement, and poor evaluation. This video is about our solution to tackle the three major problems, which is divided into 5 parts. The first part will focus about the organization chart and grid. The second is the policy. Next is the SOP and checklist. The fourth item is KPI. And the video finally ends with dashboard. Okay, let's start with part 1. An organization chart graphically represents an organization structure. Most org charts are structured by using hierarchical model, which shows management or other high-ranking officials on top and lower-level employees beneath them. So here's one of the version of Nam10's organization chart. As you can see, the top of the diagram features the executives, including CEO, executive assistant, chief operating officer, and chief revenue officer. Below them are the departments and positions. From left to right, the departments are sales, logistics, 5 mining projects, accounting. On the other hand, there are certain business areas that don't belong to any particular department or business unit. And HR in this case is one of them. We have HR manager who is responsible for all HR aspects of the firm. So, you may ask a question, if that's the case, then not every business areas are featured on an organization chart. So how do I know how many of them are there? And what specific business functions that each business area has? Well, with years of research, Professor Kirchner has invented something called the organization grid. By looking at this diagram, you receive 4 major information. First is how many business departments or business areas are there in a company. Second, what specific business functions that each of them covers, or as I like to put it, how does each area contribute to the firm? Third, the KPIs show how their performance is evaluated. And finally, the fourth one shows who is responsible for each of those department and area. Here is the organization grid at Nam10. You will notice that all the business areas are arranged based on business flow. So imagine a company raising funds, hiring people, setting up infrastructures, then performing mining and processing. After that, the firm sell the ore and ship products to the customers. The accounting department will record all the transactions, and the legal team will most likely handle internal issues. Let's focus on HR. As you can see, HR has 5 major functions that add values to the company. They are hiring and recruiting, payroll and benefits, training support, employer and employee relation, culture development, and disciplinary actions. Based on those activities and functions, you can evaluate HR's performance based on the following numbers. Current staff in each department or area. Number of hiring requests. Number of right hires based on the job description. Number of employees quitting, and so on. And finally, at the bottom, you can see that Ms. Van Eyne is in charge of HR. This means that she is in charge of all the functions and the metrics above. So whenever there's an HR problem, the CEO should go to her and not her employees or other colleagues. We're moving to part 2, HR policy. It's a labor policy of Nantian, which was developed by Ms. Van Eyne herself. During the time she was working on it, she explained to me about the labor policy, and I learned that if I ever run a company, then having a labor policy is a must. In case my company has more than 10 people, then the policy has to be legally documented. She further told me the 3 reasons why a company must have labor policy. Number 1, it is used to clearly identify the roles and responsibilities of people working at your company. 2, it contains the internal rules and policies, norms that employees must follow when working. 3, it is based on to perform disciplinary actions and, in some cases, to fire employees. Let me tell you a story about how she finished and legalized this labor policy. Ms. Van Eyne first downloaded a labor policy template from the internet. She customized the layout and gathered input stakeholders so that she could fill in certain content. After that, she sent the draft to major stakeholders for review. She then refined the document and prepared a host of registration files associated with the labor policy. Then, she submitted them to the local Department of Labor, which is located in Taiwan. The department will examine the documents to check if there is any legal issue. If there is no, then the labor policy is registered and became effective after 15 days. And finally, she communicated the labor policy to the entire company. So by now, you can imagine the process of creating a labor policy document from start to end, right? But this is a bit wordy. So I'm going to show you a technique you could use to visualize the process. Which brings us to part 3, SOP. So what is an SOP? By definition, an SOP, or a standard operational procedure, is the official or the usual way that people are expected to do particular things in a company or organization. So the example of establishing and legalize the labor policy is considered an SOP. So how do I create an SOP like this, but more succinct and comprehensible? Well, I have a solution for you, and it's called a flowchart, and it looks like this. Instead of paragraphs, flowchart uses a variety of shapes. A circle means start, a rectangle means steps, a diamond shape is used when there is a decision to make. This shape represents documents involved or produced. And finally, a similar circle with bolded strokes represents the finish of a process. However, one shortcoming of this flowchart is that it doesn't necessarily show who does which step. To fix this problem, we have another type of modeling, and it is called the swim lane diagram. Here's the SOP for payroll applied in the logistics department. As you can see, we have 5 positions participating in this business flow.
The process starts with logistics supervisor collecting delivery tickets from drivers. Then, the CRO will send him a document that includes all the advancements drivers receive while working on the road. The logistics supervisor then processes the documents, and afterwards, he sends back the advancement report to the CRO, along with the delivery tickets after processed. Similarly, the HRM will also receive the work report from the logistics supervisor. Having the report in hand, the HRM then drafts a payroll report and sends it back to the logistics supervisor for confirmation. If there is feedback from the staff, the HRM will work to solve it. If there is none, the HRM, the supervisor, and the CEO will sign off the payroll report. And finally, the financial manager will disperse the money to each banking account. Well, here's a problem with NAM10. Not everyone can grasp SOPs due to the complexity of the model. To fix that, we use something called the checklist. Imagine yourself as an HRM, and today you participated in two SOPs, one called recruitment and one called payroll for logistics. You can create a checklist for the day like this. Look into the candidate's CV, schedule interview session, host the job interview, calculate payroll for logistics, and finally send the payroll report to the logistics supervisor for review. As you can see, while SOP shows you the big picture, checklists help you break it down and control your tasks. Now we move to part 4, KPI. When we were discussing the org grid, there was a list of KPIs. KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. These are the important metrics that we base on to evaluate the operation. As a manager, if I don't have this, then I do not know the status of my operation, whether it is in good shape or in bad shape. So how can I come up with a suitable KPI? Well, the steps and the outcomes of the SOPs are great input for developing KPIs. For example, based on the payroll for logistics, the number of mistakes found in the payroll report could be a useful KPI. If this number is regularly high, then we need to solve this problem. If it is low, then I know that we're doing a good job. There will be a lot of KPIs for the purpose of management and reporting. Here's an instance of a report based on KPIs. As you can see, there are a lot of numbers, which tends to cause complication to the readers. It will take some time for you to read these numbers and find problems in the operation. So the question here is there a way we can visualize the numbers so that they are more comprehensible and easier to interpret? This question brings us to part 5, dashboard. Here's a dashboard. A dashboard contains a lot of visualizations. Visualizations are figures, charts, graphs that are used to represent KPIs in a more meaningful and visual way. So, instead of looking at the number of employees in each department individually, I can simply look at this donut chart. And almost immediately I notice that the figure for project 1 is the highest. As an HRM, I should pay more attention on this area. Besides donut chart, there are numerous visualizations, including scorecard, line graph, tree map, bar chart, area chart, and maps. KPIs are better understood via visualization, and a collection of relatable visualizations forms a dashboard. So, in conclusion, we have covered 5 HR aspects based on the case study at Namtian Mining Company. First, you learn about the organization chart that visualizes hierarchy and the organization grid showing business areas and functions. Next, you learn how the HRM at Namtian created and helped legalize the labor policy, which is an utmost crucial policy document that most companies are required to have by the law. Then, you learn what an SOP is and how to visualize them using flowchart and streamline diagram. You also learn that checklist is a useful way to manage your work on a daily basis. After that, you learn that KPIs are used to evaluate performance and how to come up with KPIs based on the steps in the SOPs. And finally, you learn the concept of dashboard that contains visualizations of KPIs. I hope this video helped you in understanding how to set up an HR system in a company. Thank you very much.